The online gaming experience is a bizarre one. You have to tell yourself that you're going to invest into something that someday will have absolutely no functionality, and if you think that's improbable, you, who thinks everything is impossible, think of most of the Sega Dreamcast catalog and the online functionalities, or even the catalog of companies who still maintain more of their luster like Nintendo and Sony, the latter which was about to close PSN for PS3, and the WiiWare actually did close down. The thought of spending money in these environments is even more insane, especially when you realize that you're only ever buying virtual items. At least in the days of yore, games used to have bot matches to replicate the feel of playing online, or would have split screen. Think of something like Quake 3 Arena. Despite all of this, Dead vs. Let Die is a game that had me almost considering putting money into it. Dead vs. is more or less the sequel of Let Die, but it's now a PvP affair. The player versus player aspect used to be in the background. You would seldom encounter invading ghosts of other players, a la Dark Souls. Now it's all the focus. Players compete in a 16-player battle royale. Of course they fight each other until one is left, but you also run around foraging for resources, killing monsters and collecting power-ups. The resources will help you craft weapons. It's the most simple aspect. The monsters exist not just for resources, but also to boost your attack power. Killing player results in the same, but you can help round up your attack power with little risk. The player also has access to 3 power-ups, one that is immediately available, one that must be charged, and the final one is an empty slot to be filled with one you find on the field. When the battle actually starts, it's a more calculating, heavy affair that can ironically end quickly if you're eager to strike. This is where I have to shelve my original thoughts for the review, as changes have been made during the second phase that reduced my qualms somewhat with the experience. I also have to say that I actually bought the Battle Pass and thought quite positively of it. This video will now be more about monetization and the general experience rather than going into too much detail about an evolving experience. Monetization in video games is not a bad idea. It's just really poorly implemented. It works the best in free games that do not force you to buy in order to win. I mention this because it's often a loophole exploited by games that qualify themselves as free. DLC falls into another category, the category of you better not be hiding content in the disc. When it's new content that's released many months later, it's fine. The issue with paying extra money always comes down to consumers paying too much already or not getting what they paid for. If I pay for a $60 release, I expect all the content to be on the disc and not locked away so I can pay for it again. In the case of Dead vs., I've been pleasantly surprised. There's not anything so far that requires payment. The only setback was getting better weapons, which is done by acquiring in-game currency. The issue being that the starter weapons suck and that you're going to get bodied in the beginning. You're stuck a long time not really getting a lot of money or experience to craft new weapons because you're always on the receiving end. You can also hope to get a cosmetic or two by playing normally. I managed to receive a costume, a shield, and cosmetics for the room. I never felt pressured to buy anything. I did so out of my own volition. The economy of this game is not forced, unlike a game like Overwatch 2, where you get absolutely nothing and everything is tunneling you towards a battle pass. They even got rid of the first game to make sure you had nowhere else to go. Not only is their version of the past overpriced, but what you're getting with it is pretty lacking. Most costumes are terrible recolors blocked behind giant paywalls. Here, stuff is actually desirable and varies widely, and outfits can be upgraded to get a second or third look. It's the kind of game where the transactions come naturally and willingly. It's an actual free-to-play. Back to the gameplay, Deadverse allows the player to do a string of combos using left click, a special attack using right click, use a shield, dodge, and throw a projectile. There's also 3 special skills available, but those are not an issue. Some might seem unbalanced, but when you get used to them, you realize that they require a lot of mastery. Where the game had issue was in the actual fighting, especially in the defensive maneuvers. The dodge was trash, but it seems better now. It's hard to pinpoint why, probably the distance or the invincibility frames. The shield was also a big offender. That right click attack breaks it immediately. It leaves you stunned for a couple of seconds and you can only attack with hands and feet. You have to bunny hop around to survive. The changes, along with my experience, has taught me that the best course of action was to hit only once and alternate with a shield break or special attack. Eagerness gets you killed. Getting in top 5 now is far more consistent of an affair. Before, it really felt like you had no defensive options and the consequences for getting hit were too intense. The maps can also be a little drab. Despite the different ecosystems, the similar design of the art makes the different quadrants stand out less. I was expecting a new map on rotation until I realized that the different levels were already present as each quadrant. The only thing I do not like with the monetary aspect are the coupons and trinkets. There might be a little too much of them. There's coupons for each resource type. There's T-coins for special items that are earned during Twitch events that I've yet to partake on. Feathers for weapon skins and dead medals. It would be better if resources were bought using in-game money. You have a lot of it, but not anything to spend it on. Well, not a lot. The few things you do have are overpriced. Their value could be reduced to compensate for more spending options. The rest can be dead medals. It's not too much of an issue, but it would streamline things a bit. Deadverse has been so far a surprising experience. I have completely ditched Overwatch. I always preferred individual activities because when I fail, the blame rests on my shoulders and I can do something about my failure. And it's quite the case here with Deadverse. I'll come back to this game as it evolves and new phases roll around. There's a lot more to be covered here, but I want to wait for improvements on the game and on my part. As of now, I would warmly recommend Deadverse Let It Die.